who is the chairman of the Chinese Communist Party. And we're doing this piece because right now what we're involved in, especially with the great influx of new people into our party and into our movement, we're really doing a lot of work to help people to understand how to be in the party. There is a political culture of the African People's Socialist Party that we want everybody to understand and to know how to work with and function in as effectively as possible, enthusiastically as possible. And we've taken this from Mao Zedong, because Mao Zedong, as I mentioned, was the leader of the Chinese Communist Party. And it was an organization that participated in one of the most successful revolutionary movements in human history, in the sense that they succeeded in taking a group of cadre, shaping and developing a group of cadre over a period of years, and contending with some of the most serious contradictions known to the world. They took what was a semi-feudal country and where people were oppressed by one time the Japanese. They had to contend with their own fledgling bourgeoisie that worked hand in glove with imperialist forces from the United States to the Japanese themselves, and forces that were armed to the teeth. And this group, organized under the Chinese Communist Party and eventually under the leadership of Mao Zedong, achieved an incredible feat in winning political power. So it was a particular form of organization that was utilized, that has come to be recognized over a period of time as a standard for revolutionary organizations throughout the world. It's called democratic centralism, that being the main component. And the African People's Socialist Party has the same basic organizational principle of democratic centralism as did the Chinese Communist Party, which itself was influenced by the revolutionary organization created by V.I. Lenin, who led the successful revolution that achieved political power in Russia in 1917. So we have a lot of respect for various organizational principles that have proved themselves to be successful. And as I mentioned, democratic centralism is the main organizational principle that was utilized by the Russians, utilized by the Chinese, and has been utilized by various revolutionary forces throughout the world, the Vietnamese, etc. So one of the fierce contradictions that any genuine revolutionary organization has to contend with is a contradiction that's referred to as liberalism. It is a form of extreme dishonesty. Liberalism is, and liberalism is something that is taught to us on a daily basis. All of our relationships informed by liberalism, a kind of dishonesty. And for those of you who have not engaged in this study in the past, you will see exactly what we're talking about when we talk about the dishonesty of liberalism. And I moved to smile because, as you know, one of the great criticisms that people hear of one of the outstanding liberals of today in U.S. Political politic, in U.S. politic, is Hillary Clinton, and she is notorious as a liar. But liberalism is dishonest in and of itself. Also, I want to acknowledge that Mao was a Marxist, as was V.I. Lenin. And that is to say, their worldview was informed not only by the methods developed by Karl Marx, but also conclusions of Karl Marx. And we don't agree with many of the conclusions and the fundamental aspect of what is characterized as Marxism. But throughout this study, Combat Liberalism, you will see references to Marxism. And what I've done is simply discount this reference to Marxism as a guiding worldview and substitute African internationalism, which is that governs our outlook on human society. What I would like to do, first of all, is to say that these studies are extremely important that we've been involved in now for a while. When I say these studies, I mean the ones that we're doing on Sunday mornings. Those of you who have been with the party and the movement for a period of time also know that these are not the only studies that we do, that organized from this office of the African People's Socialist Party's chair and the Agipop department. We have other studies that happen on more or less the regular basis. There is at least one monthly study that happens from our office that's open up to anybody who wants to participate in it. And we have also what we call mini intensives that occur in different places around the world. We've done it in London, England. We've done them throughout the United States, in Ferguson, Missouri, and various other places where in a particular region, we might establish intense weekend studies and work that we would be engaged in. And we also conduct what is called an intensive. An intensive is something where we spend 30 full days of actual political study and political work. It's an intensive process. And the objective is to really, in hothouse fashion, struggle to help our forces develop into the kind of cadre that we need in order to forward a revolutionary project. And it's something that's really important at this time, where finally, after more than 2 generations of dormancy, the African Revolution is finally rearing its head inside the United States. And we see evidence of that in various other places around the world. Of course, we're not just interested in political action for the sake of action. We are looking to overturn the relationship that we have with white power imperialism that strangles us and crushes the humanity of our people, our spirit, that steals virtually everything that we need in order to live a prosperous life as a nation of people that has been forcibly dispersed around the world. And it goes so far as even to hijack our culture, so that there's cultural banditry that steals the African culture and then repackages it and then sells it back to us, often coming from strange thin lips and white skins and from sources that look nothing nor act anything like African people at all. So it's a serious moment in history to see this incredible African nation rearing its head with greater consciousness today than we've seen in more than 2 generations. To see a situation where we have the ability to trace the immediate origin of this growing consciousness, because it is a consciousness that flourished, that came to life in this period at a time where Africans had the benefit of a revolutionary party, revolutionary organization in the form of the African People's Socialist Party, those many of whom are in this discussion right now. And if not all party members, certainly everyone who's a part of the Uhuru movement that's led by the African People's Socialist Party. And because of this, there's no mystery to us. Unlike people who sometimes think that singers who who produce great music are responsible for consciousness, or people who think that consciousness come from good speeches made by clever people. We can say without any doubt that this rapid growth of revolutionary consciousness that is influencing everything that's happening in this country today has its immediate origin in the resistance of African working class poor people right there in Ferguson. And we can even take it closer and more definitively say that it comes from Canfield Drive in Ferguson, Missouri, where this incredible resistance rose up on August 9th, 2014. It's not the only resistance that's happened. It's not the only incidents of police murder that we've seen, but this is the one that captured the attention and the imagination of Africans and other people throughout the country and throughout the world. And this is the one that is responsible for a movement that that has also given life to sectors of the African population who, though part of the oppressed African nation, are far removed from a revolution, and who would use the struggles of the oppressed and African working people as something to advance their individual careers, or that would advance the interests and aspirations of a sector of the population that has no interest in actual social transformation. But the party is different, and we have to now take advantage of this place where we are. It is a place that we have come to after seeing and attending so many funerals. These were targeted killings, unlike the kinds of killings that we see today, where they are not necessarily targeted killing. They're just ubiquitous. They're just part of the way white power deals with African people. You can be 12 years old and standing in a park and gunned down. You can be 7 years old in Detroit and in bed and murdered by police. You can be 18 years old and walking down the streets and followed by white men who are hunters in our community wearing police uniforms and murdered. You can be 17 years old and in a community that white people have not appreciated our presence in, and tracked down and hunted like an animal and gunned down. I mean, these are the kinds of things that do happen to African people normally, daily, on a regular basis, every day, many times a day, often, and most of which do not even make the newspapers. But now I'm talking about targeted killings. I'm talking about killings of Fred Hampton in Chicago that was designed to be the final nail in the coffin of the Black Revolution. I'm talking about the assassinations of people like Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and even Bobby Hutton in Oakland, New York, who was only 17 years old when he was killed. Or people like Lawrence Mann, who was a co-founder of the African People's Socialist Party. Targeted killings, killings that were designed to crush our struggle for happiness. Targeted killings that did not only happen here in the United States, but happened in places like Bolivia after the courageous Che Guevara had been wounded and captured. Targeted killings of people like Patrice Lumumba in Congo. And there is a huge number of people who we could identify murdered similarly as a part of a process to crush the revolution and the spirit of the people who simply desired freedom. And after so many years of a movement being silenced as a consequence of these targeted killings, we see coming out of Ferguson's, the resistance in Ferguson, the growth of consciousness that makes it possible for the African People's Socialist Party, which for 43, 44 of those years has been struggling to rebuild a revolutionary movement in a better place than ever to do that because of the growth of rapid growth of consciousness coming out of Ferguson. And so this discussion that we have and all of these meetings that we've been dealing with from the Department of Agitation and Propaganda that initiated the Sunday 8 a.m. Eastern Time meetings are studies that are designed to help shape and mold and forces who are rapidly coming into the party, and some people who've been in the party for a while, but over a period of time have not had the advantage of the growth that we are experiencing today, the new energy that's being brought into the party. So, I mean, that's the basis of these studies. It's not just some intellectual games that we play to make people more conversant in barbershops, or that will allow us to be up on the latest video to be talked about or liked on Facebook or YouTube or something to that effect. It is, how do we build the actual revolutionary force that's necessary to win our freedom. It's not just a matter of understanding the world, but a change in the world. And we need, for that to happen, we need a certain kind of organization. We have that organization in the form of the African People's Socialist Party, and we need a certain kind of membership that's highly informed, highly disciplined membership, and prepared to do everything that's necessary to win our freedom and to guarantee that our children and our people will have a future. That's why we do the studies. And speaking of discipline, I want to just go over some rules of party discipline, even before looking at combat liberalism from Mao Zedong, because when we talk about dealing with particular kinds of contradictions, we are not speaking in the abstract. There is a culture inside of the African People's Socialist Party that when it is reinforced by these kinds of studies that we're taking on today, and it is a culture that creates an attitude, a posture, a stance that cannot tolerate oppression of our people, that will never find it acceptable under any terms, the oppression of our people, the domination of African people by anybody else. And it is a culture that recognizes that if we're going to end this domination, then it is going to take an organization, a special kind of organization to do that, and a special kind of African who is a part of this organization to take that on. That's why we have in these studies, and that's why we place so much emphasis on discipline and the struggle against liberalism that we'll be talking about momentarily. I want to go to page 2 in each issue of the Burning Spear, where we display rules of party discipline. And we do this for a number of reasons. One is because we keep the party ourselves informed of standards and rules that we have as a revolutionary party, that how we should conduct ourselves and what it takes for us to be victorious. And we do it also and publish it in the Burning Spear newspaper, because we want people who are not even in the party to understand that these are rules of our party, rules of discipline of our party. And for one thing, we want people to know, because I'm convinced that serious people want to join organizations that they know are serious also. And that these rules of party discipline, when they are read by people who pick up our newspaper, informs them that this is not just any kind of organization, but a serious organization that has rules, that holds everybody accountable. Everybody in the organization is accountable to these rules of party discipline. It's not just the person who you might meet on the street in Houston or Chicago selling the Burning Spear, but it's the person who also works in the Office of Economic Development under the Office of the Deputy Chair. It's the person who works in the office of the chair, or the chair himself, who is bound to these rules of party discipline. And we think it's important for the people to be able to see that, so that the people can participate in holding us accountable also. They see our behavior. They know how we act, because if we do our work, we have relationships with the people, and they need to have the ability to criticize us, to be able to critique our behavior, how we carry out our mission. And this is the thing that links us in a very serious way to the people. And also, it is something that prevents us from achieving a certain kind of arrogance that assumes that we can act anyway, and without the guidance and being accountable to the people in the name, whose name we are making this revolution. So I just want to look at rules of party discipline, and I go over these briefly. And some of you, because I mentioned it a while ago, have probably dragged out your old trusty burning spear. Some of you have organizational manuals and things like that, and you have before you the rules of party discipline by now. But so this is what I want to say. This is, we said the June 2nd, 1974 Central Committee meeting. The following rules were drafted so that party members would have a guide to develop and strengthen our discipline. So this comes from 1974. So what is this? That's 42 years ago that these rules were put forward. And we say that any party member who, one, does not constantly strive to elevate his or her political understanding has broken party discipline. Who does not strive to unite our party with the masses has broken party discipline. Who reveals party business without authorization has broken party discipline. Who discusses a party member negatively to non-party members has broken party discipline. Who exploits or oppresses African women through action or statement has broken party discipline. Who exploits or oppresses African people through action or statement has broken party discipline. Who fails to initiate constructive criticism or self-criticism has broken party discipline. Who uses words or actions to divide the party has broken party discipline. Who refuses to recognize and follow party leadership through words or actions has broken party discipline. Who discards or weakens party leadership as opposed to strengthening party leadership has broken party discipline. And this is an important question here, because sometimes people are ambitious in the party, and I love for people to be ambitious in the party, and I love for people to aspire in the party to achieve the highest level of leadership inside the party's organization. But we cannot do any of that through trying to weaken the existing party leadership. Our responsibility is to strengthen the leadership of the party, and to strengthen the leadership of the party in terms of individuals in the party, and also to strengthen the leadership of the party as it relates to the party in general out in the world. Who helps to divide and circumvent international African unity through words or action has broken party discipline. Who uses criticism to divide and not unite the party has broken party discipline. Who uses criticism or self-criticism on a personal level and not a political level has broken party discipline. Who uses criticism or self-criticism to hide her or his own shortcomings has broken party discipline. Who does not carry himself worthy of emulation by the masses has broken party discipline. Who displays arrogance through actions or words has broken party discipline. Who displays negativism and reluctance in carrying out party tasks has broken party discipline, who does not strive to bring more Africans into the party or party organizations, has broken party discipline, who engages in adventurous and individualistic acts, has broken party discipline, and who fails to carry out party policy as manifested by the party constitution, party documents, and the Central Committee, has broken party discipline. And these are the 20 rules of party discipline. These are 20 rules of party discipline. I mean, there are others which are not necessarily spoken to here, but it's something that all of us should be conscious of. And the reason we're going through this is because we're not talking about any individual person. We're talking about the responsibility of the party and all of our membership to hold each other accountable to rules that will help us to further the revolutionary project. So what I want to do now is look at Combat Liberalism by Mao Zedong. And the objectives of this class are to teach the importance of the correct practice of criticism, self-criticism, which is an essential tool for the party's ability to put into practice African internationalism and democratic centralism. We've talked about democratic centralism, and probably everybody in this discussion has been involved. And if not, we'll be talking about it over and over again, because democratic centralism is the main organizational principle of the African People's Socialist Party. So this class also covers the party rules of discipline that we've talked about, and shows why they must be followed and how violations of discipline must be struggled against. The students must learn about the bourgeois stance of liberalism and why liberalism undermines the African working class party, and therefore why the struggle against liberalism is so important. The student will also learn the manifestations of liberalism and must be one to vigilantly wage struggle against it in themselves and in others. And we want to make these incredibly important points that principled struggle is good because it is the main weapon for ensuring the unity of the party and its revolutionary organizations. Principled struggle is good. And that liberalism rejects ideological struggle and stands for an unprincipled peace. Liberalism gives rise to a bourgeois indifferent attitude in the party, and it degenerates the unity around the leadership and the African working class. So some of you have the student guide from which I just read, and if you do, you probably have a situation where page 194 is duplicated and there is no page 195 here. But that's all right, because much of what's here, you can be found in the actual text by Mao Zedong, and this is on combat liberalism. You will find that. It's on page 197 in what you have, the document. It's the bottom right-hand side. And it is entitled Combat Liberalism, and it was done on September 7th, 1937. And what I'm asking for us to do is to look at this and in this discussion, because we ought to be able to see evidence of liberalism in our work, in ourselves, in comrades that we work with. And I'm hoping that we'll be able to understand why liberalism is rotten. It creates a whole rot inside the organization, just like it does in society at large, where things are covered over, hidden. People learn to lie in order to get along. And that means that people don't even understand the nature of the society they live in, because there's always something done to cover it up, to make it look better than what it is. So you can't ever get to the origin of a real problem or a contradiction. And it's something we learn to do early on in our existence in this kind of social system. And we do this because of we live in a a class society based on property ownership, property relations, where people are unequal in the society itself. And when you have practical material inequality, what you find is that people end up lying, and various other kinds of social contradictions emerge in such societies as that. So here, beginning, we say from the text, we stand for active ideological struggle because it is the weapon for ensuring unity within the party and the revolutionary organizations in the interests of our fight. Every communist and revolutionary should take up this weapon. That is to say, ideological struggle. But liberalism rejects ideological struggle and stands for unprincipled peace, thus giving rise to a decadent Philistine attitude and bringing about political degeneration in certain units and individuals in the party and the revolutionary organization. And if you haven't already had that experience, you'll see it. And it is a corrupting, horrible kind of politic that can penetrate our work and undermines everything that we are struggling for. Liberalism manifests itself in various ways. And then I'll begin to read some of the ways that's being spoken of in this text. And I would like for us, as we move along, to even see what we can recognize in ourselves or in the work at large. And if you have to, well, I was going to say that you could stop and you could call attention to it and we could discuss it briefly, but perhaps it'll be better for me to go through it and you can make notes and little asterisks next to the ones that most striking to you. Liberalism manifests itself in various ways. To let things slide for the sake of peace and friendship when a person has clearly gone wrong, and refrain from principled argument because he is an old acquaintance, a fellow townsman, a schoolmate, a close friend, a loved one, an old colleague, or old subordinate, or to touch on the matter lightly instead of going into it thoroughly so as to keep on good terms. The result is that both the organization and the individual are harmed. This is one type of liberalism. To indulge in irresponsible criticism in private instead of actively putting forth one suggestion to the organization. To say nothing to people to their faces, but to gossip behind their backs. Or to say nothing at a meeting, but to gossip afterwards. To show no regard at all for the principles of collective life, but to follow one's own inclination. This is a second type. To let things drift if they do not affect one personally. To say as little as possible while knowing perfectly well what is wrong. To be worldly wise and to play safe and seek only to avoid blame. This is a third type. Not to obey orders, but to give pride of place in one's own opinions. To demand special consideration from the organization, but to reject its discipline. This is the fourth type. To indulge in personal attacks, pick quarrels, vent personal spite, or seek revenge instead of entering an argument and struggling against incorrect views for the sake of unity or progress or getting the work done properly. This is a fifth type. To hear incorrect views without rebutting them, and even to hear counter-revolutionary remarks without reporting them, but instead to take them calmly as if nothing had happened. This is the sixth type. To be among the masses and fail to conduct propaganda and agitation, or speak at meetings, or conduct investigations and inquiries among them, and instead to be indifferent to them and show no concern for their well-being, forgetting that one is a communist and behaving as if one were an ordinary non-communist. This is the seventh type. To see someone harming the interests of the masses and yet not feel indignant or dissuade or stop him or reason with him, but allow him to continue. This is an eighth type. To work half-heartedly without a definite plan or direction. To work perfunctorily and muddle along. So long as one remains a monk, one goes on tolling the bell. This is a ninth type. To work half-heartedly without a definite plan or direction. To work perfunctorily and muddle along. So long as one remains a monk, one goes on tolling the bell. This is a ninth type. To regard oneself as having rendered great service to the revolution. To pride oneself on being a veteran, to disdain minor assignments while being quite unequal to major tasks. To be slipshod in work and slack in study. This is a 10th type. To be aware of one's own mistakes and yet make no attempt to correct them, taking a liberal attitude toward oneself. This is an 11th type. We could name more, but these 11 are the principal types. They are all manifestations of liberalism. Liberalism is extremely harmful in a revolutionary collective. It is a corrosive which eats away unity, undermines cohesion, causes apathy, and creates dissension. It robs the revolutionary ranks of compact organization and strict discipline, prevents policies from being carried through, and alienates the party's organizations from the masses which the party leads. It is an extremely bad tendency. Liberalism stems from petty bourgeois selfishness. It places personal interests first and the interests of the revolution second, and gives rise to ideological, political, and organizational liberalism. People who are liberal look upon the principles of African internationalism as abstract dogma. They approve of African internationalism but are not prepared to practice it or to practice it in full. They are not prepared to replace their liberalism by African internationalism. These people have their African internationalism, but they have their liberalism as well. They talk African internationalism, but practice liberalism. They apply African internationalism to others, but liberalism to themselves. They keep both kinds of goods in stock and find a use for each. This is how the minds of certain people work. Liberalism is a manifestation of opportunism and conflicts fundamentally with African internationalism. It is negative and objectively has the effect of helping the enemy. That is why the enemy welcomes its preservation in our midst. Such being the nature, there should be no such place for it in the ranks of the revolution. We must use African internationalism, which is positive in spirit, to overcome liberalism, which is negative. A communist should have largeness of mind and should be staunch and active, looking upon the interests of the revolution as his very life and subordinate her personal interests to those of the revolution. Always and everywhere, she should adhere to principles and wage a tireless struggle against all incorrect ideas and actions, so as to consolidate the collective life of the party and strengthen the ties between the party and the masses. She should be more concerned about the party and the masses than about any private person, and more concerned about others than about herself. Only then can he be considered a communist. All loyal, honest, active, and upright communists must unite to oppose the liberal tendencies shown by certain people among us and set them on the right path. This is one of the tasks on our ideological front. And again, this is from 1937, Mao Zedong, the Chinese Communist Party. And I'd like to just go ahead and open it up and let's talk about it. Let's talk about combat liberalism. And in this discussion, we can even reference the rules of party discipline. And one of the things that we'll learn is that the government, the state, our enemies love liberalism to be in our organization. Because liberalism, let me give you an example. Sometimes what the government will do is will put people in our organizations. And they will put people in an organization who are informants, who may or may not be trained and on the government payroll all the time. And they collect information about everybody, everything that goes on in the organization. And because they get paid for the kind of information they collect, they even make up stuff so that they can have a good tale to tell their handlers to boost their income. And the government would put people in who are regular agents, collecting information and doing other kinds of things. And they will put people in who function as provocateurs. And provocateurs will do everything they can to disrupt the party. They will try to make the party look bad. They are the people who will take on critical responsibilities to carry out a certain action and then not carry out the action in order to make the thing fail. They will do things that will make the people hate the party, hate the work by how they carry out stuff. And if we have people in our ranks who are doing these kinds of things, and there's too much liberalism inside the party to our movement in general to check this, to struggle against this, to criticize this, to report this, then that rot stays in the organization, and you have the government and our enemies being able to infiltrate and do all kinds of horrible things. And what it means is that everybody who would do these things won't be in the government. They won't be working for the police or something like that. But they might as well be working for the police in terms of the outcome of their actions being what the police attempt to make happen all the time. And that's one of the reasons why it is so important. Democratic centralism is so important. Accountability is so important. Struggling against liberalism is so important. And the other reason the struggle against liberalism is important, it makes better persons of ourselves. And it helps us to create a new and different kind of society where people don't walk around lying, because there's an assumption somehow if you lie to somebody about something, then you can get along with them and things can be better. It's like the old commercial that I've seen where this caricature of Abe Lincoln is asked by his wife if this dress makes me look fat. And of course, what you got to say is, nope, you look fabulous, etc. Of course, that's a lie. And if the dress makes her look fat, and then she goes out in the world thinking she's all that, and she would wear something that fat people should maybe think about twice, you haven't helped her at all, and with your lie. And you've created a corrosive kind of relationship between the two of you where you have to lie all the time. And sometimes she even expects the lie from you, or he expects the lie in your relationship. And everything, all throughout the society, you see people lying all the time. And because telling the truth is sometimes held to be disruptive, impolite, anything like that. That's not the kind of society that we need to live in. People need to be able to be honest in our relationships with each other, in the kind of society that we're trying to build. And certainly, if we're going to make a revolution, we need to be able to know that when somebody says something, that's absolutely the truth, as well as they understand it. That we're not dealing with people who are going to say stuff that makes us feel good, but they're going to make us feel good by saying something that's absolutely true and correct. And people need to be able to turn their backs on a task, knowing that it's been taken care of, because the person who has responsibility for that is going to do everything to make sure it can happen. So I want to open it up for discussion, and I've got a lot of people in the study, and I'd like to hear from you. Uhuru.
Muted. Unmuted.
Okay.
That's us
Okay.
So
they have to unmute themselves.
Yeah, they can star 6.
in order to, I guess you can star 6 and to unmute yourselves. That's what I'm hearing on this side here. So do you want to hear from anybody? Anybody got anything to say about this study?
Can you hear us?
They may be muted. Unmute them. Just put star 5 again.
All callers are unmuted.
Okay. Uhuru, can you, okay. Is there anyone who wants to comment? Uhuru.
Can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Herdosha.
Yeah.
This is Herdosha, Chairman. I really appreciate this study, and I just, I think that this is very important, and I just wanted to, if you could elaborate on how, I think you did a great job laying out how this is very harmful to the comrades around us, and how this really is dangerous when we engage in being liberal with one another, and how it don't allow the person to grow and to develop. And I just wanted to see if you can elaborate on that as leaders, just as comrades, period, but especially with leaders when we are leading different forces, and when we are engaged in being liberal with one another, and having really subjective relationships where we can't overturn that contradiction, of how it's very dangerous, and it's a really dangerous thing.
Uhuru. I think that's right. I think that one of the difficulties we have with struggling against liberalism too is we have to learn how to deal with criticisms, and we have to learn how to make self-criticism, and everything in this bourgeois colonial society. And this is peculiar in particular, as far as I know, with white society. I mean, it may have existed in other places, but I'm told that when Europeans first met the indigenous peoples on this land, that they didn't even have a word for lie. And, when you've heard, like in the movies, white man speaks with 2 tongues, etc., because it was uncommon. And when there's a certain kind of economic and political and social equality, then one doesn't have to lie. One doesn't have to trick anybody to get anything. One doesn't have to worry about one's feelings being hurt, because you have a society of equality. The only way you can hurt somebody's feelings really is if there's inequality here in this relationship, and what you say can have so much weight that it can undermine somebody's sense of self-worth and self-esteem. But the kind of society that we are creating is a different kind of society. But nevertheless, we learn all of the bad habits of this society, and we are rewarded for kowtowing, for following the line, for being yes men and yes women. We are rewarded for that in everything that we see and everything that we do, and we are punished often for being honest. I mean, Honest Abe, if he had told his wife he was fat, she looked fat, would have experienced some kind of punishment for that. And one thing that will be helpful is, because we are the advanced detachment of our class, and we have to set examples of a certain kind of integrity and honesty, and people will respect us for that. And from your own experience, I've heard you say, Comrade Herdosha, at different times that you have been critical of somebody something, and they may have appeared to be angry, and they've come back and they really respect us because we do tell the truth, because we are honest. And but we can ourselves, if in the face of criticism, if somebody criticizes us and we fly off the handle off every time in our political work, you criticize somebody and their face is all stuck up out and you know, they show anger, etc. It dissuades people from even using criticism, because if you know you're going to get such a negative response, and if we're in leading roles especially, and receive a criticism, and we have the ability to affect people's relationship in the work based on whether or not they criticize us or not, and we do that, then we discourage criticism. And if I say, you know, people can act with outrage in the face of criticism, or people can break down and cry every time you say something, and they collapse in a state of hysteria, etc. That also is a way, by the way, of struggling against the principles of criticism and self-criticism. We deal with criticism because it's not about us. In order to deal with criticism and the struggle against liberalism, and liberalism itself is a way that we put ourselves in the center of everything. And to struggle against liberalism requires for us to hear something beyond ourselves and to understand what relationship this criticism has to the work that we're trying to perform to free our people. And that's an ongoing struggle. It doesn't happen overnight. It's an ongoing struggle. That's why I'm saying we're talking about a culture, because in the material world that we live in, that doesn't change because our ideas about it change. It doesn't mean that the world has changed outside. And so it's an ongoing thing, that there's a constant reinforcement of liberalism outside of the relationships that people have with us and inside the party, every place else they go, on their jobs and their love affairs and etc., that that liberalism is at work. And so it's an ongoing process that we're engaged in terms of struggling against this very insidious practice inside our movement and inside our work. I also want to say that that we have to know our forces and who it is that we're dealing with. And sometimes people we have to struggle against contradictions in every instance. There's not an instance that we should not struggle against contradictions, but how we struggle against them at some times will be determined by who we're struggling with, and we know who we're struggling with, and we know where they are in terms of their own political development, etc. And we would take this into consideration, not as something that would prohibit struggle, but how we struggle and how we drive home in very sharp and unequivocal ways the contradiction that people bring with them, or that we're trying to deal with. Uhudu. Anyone else?
This is Brandon.
Yes, Brandon.
I had a question or trying to understand the differences between Marxism and socialism or socialism. Could you help me out?
Yeah, I mean, Marxism, people have lived and struggled to live a certain way throughout history. Marx made his impact on philosophy and political science in the 1800s. And part of what Marx did that was really brilliant and great was he really investigated as well as he could at the time the motives of the process of the development of human society, and he was able to draw certain kinds of conclusions about laws of social development, and also about the methods of investigating and analyzing society. He concluded very importantly that society can be understood. That it's just like you can understand physical or natural science. You can understand there is a science of society that will allow us to understand it. That we don't have to live in a world where we assume that the boogeyman is going to get you if you do a certain thing, or that history and progress are things that are made by kings and queens, and that the intentions of human beings is the fundamental force that's responsible for how society will look and how society will act. This is really important that he did. He took works and that have been done by a lot of people over centuries, different times, and a lot of different societies. We call it dialectical and historical materialism. And dialectics as a way of looking at the world from an all-sided way, from every aspect, every angle of society, and to look at it recognizing that all phenomenon has a relationship to all other phenomenon, and that all phenomenon in society is in a process of dying out and coming into existence. You know, by that I mean, you know, at the moment a woman gives birth, has birth to a child, brings a child into the world. Two things are at play. One, the child is living, and the other is the child is in the process of dying. As I say, those are two things. And he said that you can understand society, human society, and all things in nature, you know, based on that. That was really important. And that all things have to be understood in terms of the actual motion that they're involved in. Motion is the condition for the existence of all material things, and that the relationships that they have with each other. So Marx made a great contribution. But the weakness of Marx was that, and he came to certain conclusions based on this method of investigating and analyzing society. The weakness of Marx is that while at one hand he was able to say the starting point for the kind of capitalist society that he was investigating and summing up, he was able to say the starting point, the critical aspect of this, the thing that has a significance in political economy that's equal to the original sin in theology, is what he called primitive accumulation. We call it parasitism. The way how Europe fixed itself on Africa and all these other people, and primitive accumulation, as he characterized it, was an essential, huge problem, because what he was doing now was speaking to the development of white society or European society, and he was placing Africans and other peoples in a relationship to that society only as it contributed to the development of European society. That's why they called it primitive accumulation. Primitive accumulation of what? It was a primitive accumulation of the capitalism that thrust white society to the apex of human civilization, human development. But it came at the expense of Africa and indigenous peoples here, and everywhere he makes this recognition, we and Africans and everybody else are discarded as having any other significance. Our significance was starting the whole damn thing up, and then starting the thing that led to the development of white power, white people, capitalist economy. And that's the weakness there. And what we see is that what Marx defined is not the development of human society, but the development of white society, of European society, that came at the expense of everybody else. That's the explanation for why we live in a world today where 80% of the people are trying to survive off $10 or less in the world. That's the basis of that. But you hear the Marxists and communists and so-called socialists talking about it They talk about making revolution not based on the immiseration and the impoverization of a vast majority of the people, but based on what is happening in Europe, essentially, among white people, and the development of the productive forces, and the struggle of the workers against the bourgeoisie. And so we say that's absolutely wrong. And what is right is that the road to socialism is painted black. That the whole capitalist edifice rests upon the exploitation, the incredible exploitation, brutal exploitation of Africans and indigenous peoples and other oppressed peoples around the world. And that real socialism and communism will come not as a consequence of white workers overthrowing the white ruling class or the industrial worker class, which means white, overthrowing the industrial ruling class, but real communism and socialism can only come about as a consequence of the oppressed peoples, Africans and others, overturning this relationship that we have to white power capitalism. And so that's the thing that distinguishes us. And we say that up until now, there has never been a genuine socialist revolution. There's only been revolutions where socialists took power. And that's different because that most people don't understand. Because socialism is not something that one has because one declares the existence of socialism. Socialism is that point where what has often been referred to even by Marxists as the early stages of communism, where the working people have destroyed the state of the capitalist ruling class, and the workers themselves have become, the workers in arms have become the state. And this is a transitory moment of transition from capitalism to communism. And that's when the workers, that's when you have socialism, when the workers have power. And of course, what we've been looking at up to now is what we call white socialism, because it's always been a socialism that still required being able to take oil from the people in the Middle East and from Africa, and being able to get all kinds of resources from the oppressed peoples around the world. I don't know if I helped at all with that. It's an ongoing discussion that we continue to have, but I don't know if that was helpful at all, Brandon.
It did help me. Thank you.
Uhuru.
We have a question from Oakland.
Question from Oakland, from whom?
Sadia.
From Sadia. Yes.
She asks, how might we distinguish or differentiate between liberalism as laid out here by Mao, the party, as opposed to liberalism as the dual political spectrum, on the dual political spectrum?
I don't understand the question.
Maybe if I read it better. How might we distinguish or differentiate between liberalism as laid out here by Mao, the party, as opposed to liberalism on the dual political spectrum?
I don't understand it. I don't know what the dual political spectrum is. Uhuru. Yes.
I was just wondering, when we talk about liberalism in this way, in revolutionary struggle, is that the same, or is that something different than liberalism as thrown around a lot by Republicans and Democrats, and is a huge part of the political structure? I
think in reality it is the same, because that's why I've always been struck by how people will condemn, for example, a Clinton or Sanders or somebody else, and they'll say, well, they call them they so-called liberals, and as if when they betray us that they're not really liberals because they betrayed us. And I'm saying liberalism does that. Liberalism cannot tolerate a conclusion. It cannot tolerate a final solution. Liberalism requires, for example, you will find that liberalism, they don't want to overturn the social system. They're always protecting the social system. They might offer some kind of solution short of an actually defining and dealing with the social system. Liberals kind of can't tolerate abrupt transformation, overturning it. They like gradual kinds of non-disruptive movement, So yeah, that's what it is. They don't talk about it in that fashion, but liberalism within the whole bourgeois political spectrum is the same. That's exactly what we're talking about. It's rotten, and it contaminates the whole body politic, because people never can get to a revolutionary conclusion working with a damn liberal. Liberalism will never take you to a conclusion, to a revolutionary conclusion. It's always about some kind of gradual process. Revolution is abrupt and something that happens with suddenness and violence, violence transformation. Liberals can't handle that. So for them, everything has to be gradual, and we'll get there one day, and let's have $15 an hour over a number of years, but not what a real socialist will be talking about, which is that the working class assumes power over every damn thing, and the working class will begin to determine what the income of everybody's going to be, as opposed to a bourgeoisie saying that calls themselves a socialist, that you can get $15 an hour. Or the AAPRP that has decided that somehow they call themselves socialists, but the students are the spark of the revolution and not the actual working class, who has to ascend to power in order for there to be socialism, which is the workers in arms, the state as the workers in arms. Uhud, I hope it's helpful. Yeah. Uhudu.
Uhudu, Chairman, and comrades. So I first off want to say that I really appreciate this session here, because I think, speaking completely transparently, that this is crucial. This is probably one of the most crucial documents that I have seen in connection with other documents in the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that it shows, it demonstrates that we consistently fight against the contradiction within ourselves, and we see the contradiction within our comrades, and attempt to overturn those contradictions. And I feel even in the society we see so much liberalism, and probably all comrades have been in a situation where they've dealt with people in a society in which they find themselves angry with them, or they find themselves flustered or confused by what people do because of this liberalism that goes on so rapidly in our society, where you're at an employment and people seemingly are lazy or don't want to do work, or can't take the criticism that you give them, and you find yourself, what they say is pigeonholed, or isolated, or disconnected from the mass there. But I think what we need to understand is that that clearly liberalism runs rampant, and because of liberalism running rampantly through this society, nobody is really facing the fact that they need to overturn the contradiction within itself. Mm. And I would say that I fully unite with this document, and that it is a constant work. And my question to you, which may be somewhat of a contradiction within itself, is because Westernized society allows such liberalism, how do we make it most digestible for the people to say, we need to overturn this contradiction, and liberalism is corrosive to the development of our relationship and of the movement?
Uhuru. Yeah, first of all, let me just tell you, I've seen it happen in among African people. And liberalism is not just some innocent thing, that Africans are not liberal just out of some natural tendency. Because if you say the wrong thing, white people will kill you. That's been our history. White people will kill you. You can't say what's on your mind. If you say it, the white man will take you out, will kill you, will kill your family, will kill your children. This is the history of our relationship with liberalism, that you can't say what you think. But yes, sir, I sure do. Yes, sir, I sure love you, boss. So yes, sir, you sure is wonderful, boss, etc. You even learn to talk a certain way, because if you talk like you got too much sense, the white man would kill you. And so liberalism is something that's been beaten and clubbed into African people in terms of our relationships with white power. And what I've seen is the vanguard, the advanced detachment of African people acting non-liberal in the contest that we have with white power. Panthers were not liberals with white power. Black Power movement was not liberal with white power. First time white people ever saw non-smiling black people who stand face to face to them. That was a earth-shattering kind of phenomenon, because you're supposed to grin and shuffle and do all of this other kinds. I saw this in the 1960s, an incredible transformation, how we looked, how we acted, and how we stood tall. And the African militant is a non-liberal. That's what non-liberalism means in terms of the political stance of African people, and that's the kind of thing that begins to transform us. But because the essence of our relationship is not to be found just between you and I as individuals. The essence of our relationship is found between the contest between our people and white power, and how we stand up to white power is the most informative thing that we do in helping African people to know how to stand. Because you can't teach somebody how to stand if what you're doing is just standing next to somebody else who's obviously and abjectly weak and powerless. What teaches people how to stand is when they're standing strong in the face of somebody who has incredible power and has always exercised a willingness, demonstrated a willingness to use it against us. So that's the thing, that's the critical thing. And I want to say beyond that, that's why issues that we deal with in terms of the question of women, homosexuals, and stuff like that being able to be human beings, because nobody needs to be in a damn closet. And whether that's in the closet in your brain, and I'm talking about women who can't say the right thing because Africans or men would kick their asses, or because if you look and say a certain way, you're no longer quote unquote ladylike, and all of these other kind of punitive things that happen so that people have to pretend to be who we're not be because you pay a price when you don't do that. So we try to create a situation of honesty and integrity. So we say, women will lead, and that there's no oppression of homosexuals or anything like that. People are who the hell they are in the struggle to fight for our freedom. And we teach a new way to people that is non-liberal, and I think that's the kind of thing that will contribute. We are practical revolutionaries, as Huey P. Newton used to like to say. And people learn through example and participation. And so we give examples of non-liberal, which is not to say cruel people. It's, but the way our stance in the world is what informs our people about what the stance in general should be. When you got a kowtow and bootlicking people, whether it is in the face of people who, in the form of people who pray to the east, or in the form of people who pray however they pray, etc., who always finding excuses for my brother, I know my brother, this and that, etc.
Can you hear?
Someone has to mute.
Oh.
So anyway, everybody mute if you are not speaking. Uhuru. So anyway, that was my response, Comrade Mentor. I hope it was helpful.
Uhuru, comrade.
Uhuru. Anyone else? Uhuru. Yes.
This is Yet. I appreciate this study. I think this is, just having been in the party for the past 6 years, and you know that this is a constant struggle that we have to make with ourselves, and also the constant struggle that happens within the party. And at certain times, since I've been in the party, we've encouraged public self-criticism, and as a way to hold the party up to the people, hold the party accountable to the people. Can you say more about why we've done that, and also in those instances, we've gotten criticism from the people, like why we airing our business and things like that. And can you say more about why we do that and why it's important to do that?
We don't air our business, we air the people's business. You know what I mean? Because it is, again, like part of what we always involved in doing, especially if there are contradictions in our work among our members, that we recognize contradictions that come from the larger African population that traps us and bogs us down and makes it difficult for us to do what we have to do. When these contradictions happen inside the work, we do part of what I was just talking to Comrade Mensa about. We hold it up to be examined by masses of our people, and then people who are in the party have had to step before the people on Uhuru Radio, live stream events, public meetings where people come out and do self-criticism. I committed this offense. I committed this offense against this woman. I committed this offense in this fashion that hurt our struggle, hurt our movement. And I did it because I've got these backwards ideas that come from the white ruling class that's responsible for our oppression. And for that, it's a horrible offense. I did it, and it's something that keeps us from making the revolution that I'm supposed to be committed to. I did it, and it's something that fell my responsibility to my brothers and sisters, et cetera, et cetera. And this is not something that our party believes in, and that I want to be criticized for my error. I'm initiating this self-criticism, and I expect criticism for my error so that I can help to learn and grow from this process, and you can help can grow from this process as well. What we do when we put it on display like that is we give the people an example of an alternative way of solving contradictions in the society that we live in. Because even though we have a society where there's no criticism, self-criticism like what we are doing now. In Chicago, we see African people criticizing themselves daily on a regular basis at gunpoint. Yeah. And this is how the criticism happens in our communities. And what we're seeing, there's another form of criticism and self-criticism that we can engage in. And I can walk up to you, brother or sister, and I can say, look, I made this error. I made this error. It's my contradiction, and I did it because of this and that. And it becomes unnecessary for people to feel like they got to pick up a gun to prove their manhood and go kill somebody, etc. The forms of criticism that we take, because we do criticize each other, but it's usually the wrong way, you know. So I think that's one of the reasons what we try to do, set examples of how we can engage in criticism and self-criticism. I was looking at something on YouTube the other day, and I don't know how people understood this, but there was somebody, it was from China. This is China today. This is China that's not even under communist leadership, and where people riding on the subway, and somebody was eating and throwing pumpkin seeds or some kind of seeds on the floor, and people were complaining, criticizing this brother for throwing the seeds on the floor, and they were actually criticizing the brother. And the comrade was saying, F you, F you, to everybody who says something to him. When they were, and all kinds of people engaged in criticizing. So finally, a cop walks up, criticizes the guy about having something, and he beats him. Knocks the hell out of him, beats him to the floor and everything, blood everywhere, etc. And so, and then the people are still engaging in criticizing the guy. And at one point, people thought the cop was acting out of hand and criticized him too. I mean, it's just an incredible kind of situation. And I loved it when the people were criticizing this guy. This guy had no regard for the people's criticism, anything like that. And I just thought it was really interesting. And I had heard some other time that actually a cop would stop somebody for speeding and engage in a criticism of the person who was doing the speeding. That's a different kind of society altogether. And that's the kind of society that we need to create. But in the colonial society, it's criticism by weapons, and not just among ourselves, but the white man has always criticized us. That's how we learn to criticize our children, because of how the white man criticizes us. Beat him, torture him, do all kinds of horrible things to make him do what you want him to do. And so that's how we learn criticism. We criticize our children, beat them, make them do this and that. It just permeates everything that we're about. And we're saying there's a different way to handle it. And we act as the advanced attachment to teach people to handle criticism and contradictions differently. Because there are contradictions in all things. There are contradictions in all things. In our party, there will always be contradictions, different kinds of contradictions, and we have to criticize in order to develop and take our work to a much higher level. Uhuru. Anybody else? Uhuru, yes, come in.
Can you also give an example on what they was talking about in terms of adding differences to the world, inter-party struggle, something on the line, and how that struggle, non-self-criticism struggle led to total chaos within the Black Panther Party.
K-Fin, why don't you work with it? Make the point that you were going to make. Go ahead and talk about it quickly.
Yeah, I'm trying to voices kind of.
I'll help you.
Right.
Go ahead. I'll jump in. I just want to know the point, just make sure I get the point that you're dealing with.
Well, maybe 3-4 years back, that was a struggle that was made by the party against any bourgeois forces who had rose up in the party. These forces were in Sierra Leone, West Africa. Contradictions stem from, I know at one point myself, Albino had carried some radio material there so that a radio station, the party radio station, could be put on the ground in Sierra Leone. Instead of the radio station, comrade brother over in Sierra Leone, who was still in opportunism and tribalism, sold the material, and that wasn't the only time he had taken material that the party had invested resources in and given them to people of this same quote-unquote tribal origin. So we made a public a denouncement of this comrade and laid out the basis why the basis of our criticism. But what happened was that some forces criticized the party for criticizing this former comrade in public.
Yeah.
In other words, you should not watch the dirty living in public.
Yeah.
That's what.
Yeah, I think that's important, because if we don't take, some examples, we don't make every struggle public, but we make a lot of struggles public, and we make certain critical kinds of struggles public, because the process of criticism and self-criticism educates the masses of the people. The people are educated by this process, and people are taught how to understand political and social phenomena when they see it, how to interpret what it is that they're looking at. And if you've got a situation, for example, where this whole thing of so-called tribalism, ethnic politics, and stuff like that is going to dominate our struggle to build Africa, and if you got a thing of corruption that's really imposed on Africa in ways that's hard for anybody in this discussion to imagine, and if it's accepted as normal, then the people don't have an opportunity to learn from it. So yeah, we'll expose that. We'll say that's it's something that borders on criminality for African people to function in this way. It is in bed with the rulers of our people. It keeps us bogged down and locked in permanent kind of colonial oppression. And so we will take that example, and did take that example of that comrade in Sierra Leone. And there have been other instances where we've had to make that kind of struggle that people refer to as airing our dirty laundry. The same thing happened with Comrade Diop Olubala. People, said somehow you're airing your dirty laundry, and but it was not that. It's the thing is that either we're going to have a revolutionary. You can't have a revolutionary party functioning in some kind of vacuum. We have a responsibility to create a revolutionary population, a population that itself can understand, revolutionary politics. And that's where our protection lies, and the protection for the overall revolutionary project that we involved in, to the extent we bring the masses in and involve the masses in grappling with these critical kinds of contradictions and things that we are faced with. Because if the people don't are unable to embrace revolutionary politics at any given time, we ain't gonna have no revolution. That's one of the reasons it has been important for us to build the Black is Back coalition. I mean, we don't have to have a Black is Back coalition. Almost everything that we've asked the coalition to do, we could do as the party. But what we have to do as urgently as possible is build a broad appeal for the general revolutionary trajectory that we're on. That's the thing that gives a context for the revolutionary work that we try to do as the party, as NPDM, or anything like that. I've overtalked it, but that's what we're going to. Yes, comment,
Yeah, I just think that's is such a valuable discussion, because the more that we talk about the question, and especially in this period, the more, you know, I can see that we really need right now to give them examples of the new society, the new world. The people wants the new world if they can get a vision of it. And I think that would give them stakes in fighting for it. You know, the thing that you talked about in terms of how criticisms are going on right now in Chicago, over and over when we talk about killing the police killing our children, people say, what about this other violence? And you know, we have to really help people to understand that this is the way to curb this violence. If you want this to stop, that we have to have this kind of understanding in the community, that we have to have criticism this way. Teach the people how to let go of the bourgeois and the bourgeoisie and the world of the bourgeoisie. And I think right now in this period, we're going to have more examples, of this kind of engagement, putting it out to the people so that the people can get a glimpse of the new society, so they can fight for it. They have stakes in it. And I wanted to ask you about the whole question of with the New Jewel movement, how the consequences of not having criticism and not engaging the people in the criticism that enabled the United States government to overturn that revolution because of the contradictions that existed, and the people, the Grenadian people, not knowing that there was even contradictions. You know.
Yeah, the New Jewel movement was the organization that seized power in Grenada. I've forgotten the year that it happened in, and there were different factions of the New Jewel movement, and one that was organized around a man named Bernard Cord and his wife Phyllis, and the other organized around the best known representative of the New Jewel movement, Maurice Bishop, who achieved a tremendous amount of popularity, around the world. And what happened was that there were internal struggles inside the New Jewel movement that nobody knew anything about. That there were differences, and the struggles inside the movement erupted in a way that led to the assassination of Maurice Bishop, and something that the U.S. government used as a moment of opportunity to invade Grenada, to overturn that revolution. Because with Grenada, the revolution in Grenada at the time, the Jamaican government under the leadership of what's the brother's name? His father had been anyway, there was a revolutionary force in Jamaica and then Cuba. Who am I thinking of? Michael Manley. Yeah, Manley. And so that was a real issue, a problem that the United States was having, and it used this contradiction that happened inside the New Jewel movement as an excuse. They claimed some white missionary school was being threatened by this, and they invaded Grenada. And the only people who fought the Marines when they invaded were Cubans who were working to build a damn airport there. They were just airport workers. They're the only people who fought the Marines when they landed. The only ones, only resistance. People didn't know anything about any kind of struggle. Didn't know what the contradictions were that were involved or anything like that. And so the Marines invaded and did some humiliating stuff to people who were leaders of that. And one of the striking things about that as well, which is sort of an aside for me, is you had a lot of Negroes who had come from the United States and other places to go to Grenada, and they were going to be helping with the Grenadian Revolution. And all of them hopped on the boats with the Marines. They came back to the United States on the same boat with the Marines, etc. So the only ones who fought were the Cubans, and the Cubans were ideologically strong, anti-imperialist at that time. And the comrades in Grenada, the brothers and sisters, had no idea of the struggle, and therefore as militant as Bishop and Cord and the rest of them may have been. It was not something that the masses got full benefit of, and again, they knew nothing about the struggle so that they could participate and have an opinion one way or another, so that they would have known how to move when Bishop was killed. Nobody, even if the people who, if the struggles had been obvious to anybody, the people who could have united with the Bishop faction versus the Cord faction or anything like that, and they could have responded as such, but there was no evidence of any kind of contradiction like that. Anybody else? So, no other interventions. All right. Uhudu.
It's Yeshitela again.
Yes, Yeshitela.
I wonder if we could address this here, but oftentimes
Yeshitela's family is from Grenada, right? Yeshitela?
Yes, my father is Grenadian.
Yeah, your father's African, who they dropped off in the Grenadines. Okay, go ahead. What are you going to say?
Yeah, and uncle who was a part of the New Jewel movement. I get some questions sometimes from sisters who try to deal with this whole question of horizontal violence, a question of African women by African men. And, you know, one of the things, especially if the African man is so-called, black and, black power, where, this one sister talked to me about, this brother that people were rallying behind because he was approached by the police on the street, and he was, and that became a video about that, but became viral. This is in Colombia, and the sister, but there was a whole slew of sisters who had been abused by this brother, and they didn't feel like they felt powerless in a sort of way to criticize. They didn't want to seem like they were against him when obviously there was a huge rallying cry behind the injustice that he faced by the police. And so I think that's a difficult, not for me, but there's a difficult question for a lot of our women who deal with this whole question of men who are perceived to be about, black power and the freedom of black people, and, have acted in such a way that would be against the freedom of black people, but they refuse, but they feel like there's a bigger, so-called bigger question around, stating the case about so-called racism as how they framed it in Colombia. Can you just, that's liberalism in a real way, but can you speak more about that whole contradiction and how we can help people to understand it and deal with it?
Which is liberalism?
The liberalism of not saying that the brother is also engaging in.
I don't know if that's liberalism or not. Here's what you've got in every instance. Like I was saying, there are contradictions in all things. There's no thing where there is no contradiction. But what there is also true is something called the main contradiction. There's a primary contradiction, the existence of which gives birth to, gives rise to, sustains, and make the others possible and sometimes necessary. So those do exist, even under slavery. I guarantee you that there were African men who were enslaved who actually beat their wives and misuse other women. So is there really a question of whether or not, if the slave master comes in and kills this guy or brutalizes him, whether the slaves, including the women, should rise up against the slave master? Is there really a question here? Because the main contradiction is slavery. And it's not to say that the others are not contradictions. And in Vietnam, I read once how Vietnamese women were confronted with situations where a woman's husband or boyfriend was mistreating herself. The women got together and got some sticks and went over to this guy's house and kicked his ass. The point is that there are different forms of criticism that you and I are going to have to employ in our communities. And I think we have to fight against the state on the one hand, and then even as we're doing that, we might be going to this guy's house at night to kick his butt. And so it's not, and I mean that in a literal way. I'm not talking about, we've had that situation happen in the party, where a brother who was in the party beat a sister who was in the party, and some brothers in the party went to the brother's house and had a discussion with him over some knuckle soup. And so the thing is that you don't liquidate that, and you do make the struggle against the brutalization, and it's heard even more effectively, I believe, if it's done in the process of struggling against the main contradiction. We struggle against these contradictions as well. Uhuru.
Uhuru,
yes.
Comrades. I have another, and thinking about this question, right? Another question is and it may be not well formed, but we talk about other activists or leaders within various movements who are moving seemingly Africans towards liberation. And we find that liberalism has crept in so much that they are now not considered the true leaders or the true leaders of Africans and are not truly moving towards African liberation. At what point can we make sure that we are overturning the contradiction so much so that we do not lose that individual who is seemingly moving towards African liberation, and how do we pull them back in and realign them? And I know we have steps here, but I've heard, like, and I'm speaking clearly in the sense that we've heard like around Angela Davis and other Africans that where this contradiction comes up, this internal contradiction comes up, and therefore there's liberalism, and so kind of if you could help me with that.
Everybody who has been called a leader in our African community, and who perhaps at certain times have made incredibly important contributions, is not necessarily a leader. And they may have been, like I have referred to some people like so-and-so when he was a revolutionary. And because at different periods, you would see people who were actually involved in revolutionary movement, but with the change in the period, you've seen that they are no longer revolutionaries. It's not they're not revolutionaries because of ignorance, it's they're not revolutionary because of class interest. Like many African people in the 1960s on the continent of Africa and in the United States, intellectuals, sometimes middle class, sometimes aspiring to middle class and things like that, were motivated primarily because of the restrictions that white power placed on their ability as a social force or as a person in that social force to achieve what it was that they felt they were capable of achieving inside the system. That's the thing that radicalized them. That's why they became militants. That's why they said Black Power, because they were Black and they were a part of the oppressed African nation. And that white man and the white people are now dominating us. Why in the hell should the white man and the white people dominate us? I want a piece to be able to do that too. And that's not how it's articulated that I want to do that. They are patriots in the fact that they want to get white power off our backs, but they are not interested fundamentally in social transformation, overturning the system so that the working and poor people who are the most oppressed, you don't even hear the names of most of the working and poor people who were involved in the struggles in the 50s and the 60s. They are people who no longer remembered. And this is the struggle. And no, I don't mean just their names. I mean that they haven't advanced as a social force. If you look all around us, the working and poor African people, there's been no change of progress for them. Only sectors of the African petty bourgeoisie. If you look at what happened with the election of Barack Hussein Obama, I'm talking about people that I know, that I have been close with, like Amiri Baraka, Leroy Jones, Amiri Baraka. I'm talking about people like Saladin Muhammad from the African People's Party. And there's a host of other people. With the election of Obama, they all went to Obama. And the reason is because there, but by the grace of God, go I. And the fact is that they saw themselves as a social force, and the possibilities for their children are now open up now that a black person could be elected. It's not that they're not revolutionaries anymore. It's not that they are no longer revolutionary because of ignorance. It's because they see their class interests being different and being something is possible for them to achieve their aspirations as a social force. Angela Davis was never. I mean, we've had various struggles with Angela Davis. I mean, Angela Davis actually worked with all kinds of forces to keep African people in Oakland, California, movements that we led, from having houses and freedom and in practical terms, and actually worked with the state to create an alternative to a movement that would have acquired housing for the masses of African people. I'm saying that the majority of people who we would consider, it's not that they lost their way because somehow they became ignorant or they just sort of backslid. They just had a different class analysis. And we're going to have to accept the fact that some people got a whole different class view. Look at the Nation of Islam. What member, anybody, I don't care from Elijah Muhammad to the present so-called leader of the Nation of Islam, who have you ever heard in the Nation of Islam say anything like Malcolm X said? Malcolm X talked about revolution, the difference in the Negro revolution and the Black revolution. He talked about, you know, the ballad of the bullet and all this kind of revolutionary transformation. You have not heard another one of them do that. So when Malcolm X left the Nation of Islam, and others didn't leave, in fact, they went the other direction. It was a class question that was thrown upon them. It was revolutionary versus a form of uniting with the status quo. So Farrakhan consciously did not go with Malcolm X. Cassius Muhammad Clay, Muhammad Ali didn't go. In fact, they went the other direction. Elijah Muhammad went the other direction. And Malcolm is the one who struck out to try to achieve revolutionary conclusions. So the nation didn't go the way they did because of ignorance, because there's a whole different class view. And you never heard them talk about revolution, because we are not going to be able to achieve freedom without overturning the social system itself, attacking the social system. Nobody's going to give us some acreage and say, you know, and some seeds and say, you know, go out and grow your stuff. We're gonna have to fight for this, because there's a particular kind of economy that has been created at our expense. So that's the basic thing I'm saying, that sometimes people will do things out of ignorance, and that is true. But often what we see is people not moving ignorantly, and there are people who, though they are of the African nation, have a class interest that's different from the vast majority of the African people, and they will act on that. And the same thing, my friend, like Stokely Carmichael was my guy, you know, in ways that people you'll find kind of hard to dig. Stokely was my man and what have you, but he was a middle class goddamn Pan-Africanist nationalist, you know, and even though he talked about socialism, there's no way in hell that you can have socialism based on what Stokely was talking about. And he always played it safe. You know, after Mississippi, you know, so sometimes people will act a certain way because of their class interests and not because of ignorance. And Angela never was, you know, a part of the African Revolution. I mean, Angela quit the Communist Party USA because she was to the right of the Communist Party USA. She quit the Communist Party USA because the Communist Party USA wouldn't support, I forgot the guy who became Wilder, the governor of a guy who became governor in Virginia, you know, and she thought the Communist Party USA should be holding up black politicians like that. And so she quit the Communist Party, formed another kind of organization that called itself the Committee of Correspondence. And where does the Committee of Correspondence come from? Do you know where that comes from? This is some kind of committee that was created in the struggle against England by the white people in the United States fighting against the white people in England. They created a committee of correspondence that, you know, was to be their movement. So there's never been a revolutionary, you know, she never was a part of the revolution. She was a militant, and there's more that we could say about that. We just don't have the kind of time to do the elaboration that we need on that question. But that's what I'm saying, Comrade Mensah, is that everybody who used to be a revolutionary is no longer a revolutionary. And then the other thing I would say is sometimes even innocent, like Sharpton has never been on the side of the people. I remember Sharpton. I remember the development of Sharpton. I remember when Sharpton was threatening to shut down the subways of New York in the when was that? When we were doing work in Brooklyn, 81, 82. And he was a shyster then. You know, he's a shyster now. He's always been a shyster. Jesse Jackson is the guy who left Memphis and ran to the Chicago wearing what was supposed to be the shirt that had Martin Luther King blood or something that he contrived. It was, and that's been something that was even exposed since then. So a lot of these guys, you know, hustle our struggle, and they achieve tremendous prominence in the process of hustling. Stokely Carmichael was not a hustler. He was not a hustler. He was a nationalist. He was a Pan-Africanist nationalist, petty bourgeois nationalist. That's we've seen a lot of them throughout the continent of Africa, but a lot of them have been hustlers, you know. Uhuru. I don't think Amiri Baraka was a hustler. I think the whole class question, I mean, we used to call Amiri Baraka the windshield wiper, because when we met Leroy Jones, he was in Greenwich Village, married to a white woman, poor there, etc. Then he became, with the development of the movement in the 1960s, he became blacker than anybody in the whole world. Hung out with Ron Karenga, a police agent, and he switched, boom, over to that side. And then after that, he became a Maoist, revolutionary, and switched over to that side. And then after that, he became like a social democrat. So flip, flop, we call him the windshield wiper. And that's a petty bourgeois kind of stance. And I think he was honest in every instance, but somebody has once said that the honest opportunist is the worst kind because they're motivated by conviction. Uhuru. So anyway, we have to begin this process of ending. So there are announcements and something that have to be made. I do want people to really recognize and try to get to Harlem on April 9th. It's going to be a really important kind of movement, and we need to go party strong and to have just a real good presence there. This is the Black is Back Coalition National Conference on the 2016 election and the struggle for Black self-determination. So hope that we can mobilize and have a good presence there. Uhuru. Yeah.
Uhuru.
Yes.
Yes, this is Gazi Kozo from Norm about to make announcements. And I first I just want to say that I appreciate this study and study on liberalism, and I'm just very thankful for it. So for the first announcement I wanted to make, the burningspear.com has launched. We are no longer using uhurunews.com. If you do use uhurunews.com, it will go to the beautiful new website, which is the burningspear.com, which you can get your updated news, revolutionary African internationalist news. And also you can subscribe to the Burning Spear newspaper and become a distributor, and also join the Burning Spear team on theburningspear.com. The next announcement, as Chairman did say, on April 9th, 2016, we will be meeting in St. Mary's Episcopal Church at 521 West 126th Street, Harlem, New York, 10027. And you can get more information on that and also register on the Eventbrite. And the website is www.blackisbackcoalition.org. www.blackisbackcoalition.org. Africans all around the world are charging the United States of America with genocide. Please go to africanschargegenocide.org and sign the petition. If you've already signed the petition, make sure to share it today on your Facebook, Twitter, Tumblr, and Instagram to get other Africans to read, sign, and share. africanschargegenocide.org. Black Power Radio is coming to you in April, blackpower96.org. Join the team and also donate at blackpower96.org and get more information of how to get your Black Power Boombox piggy bank. If you haven't gotten your bank yet, please go to blackpower96.org right now and get your bank. All party members should have a Black Power 96 Boom Bank piggy bank. So please make sure to go on the website now if you do not have one, or make sure your friends and family get their Boom Bank immediately at blackpower96.org. The Cadre Intensive is coming up. If you received an email of the Cadre Intensive, please respond to the application and respond. If you filled out your application, look for the email of your contract, fill out the contract and send that back. And also start payment as soon as possible. You can start now for $10 a day or $20 a day and get to the $200 to $500 mark as soon as possible. Also reach out to your leadership if you need help fundraising around getting to the Cadre Intensive. You can also, as always, go to joinapsp.org and join the African People's Socialist Party. Join apsp.org to join the African People's Socialist Party. Uhuru, Chairman.
Uhuru. I just want to say that on today at 4 o'clock, we'll be live streaming the event that will be happening here at the Uhuru House. It's the 50th anniversary of the tearing down the infamous St. Petersburg mural that depicted Africans as little more than apes and what have you, entertaining white people on the beach. And a lot of people were arrested. There were 6 of us were arrested and went to jail. Is a really important, has important historical connotations in terms of the development of the entire Black Power, Black Panther movement in the United States. And so everybody should tune in to that. And that's going to be at 4 o'clock Eastern time. Uhuru.
Uhuru, yes, you can tune in on that online at theburningsphere.com. We'll be live streaming that event at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Uhuru.
Who everybody, you got anything for next week?
Was somebody saying something? Oh, I thought I heard somebody saying something.
Yes, I want.
Can I make an announcement? This is Day.
Yes.
So as you all probably know, we're having the Black is Black National Conference on the 2016 elections in the struggle for self-determination. Please go to the Eventbrite if you're planning on attending this event and register to the Eventbrite. So it's eventbrite.com and just search Black is Back conference and it should pop up.